The best way to get better at programming is to practice. And in this example, we're going to take our previous example where we had a shape class and convert the public data into private data and then use getters, setters, and other types of methods in order to access that data. As always, this file is available for download using a link provided below in the description. We'll give you a couple seconds to download it, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Alright, so let's get started here. Now the first thing we want to do is convert our public properties to be private. This does something called encapsulate, and it means that no object can share information accidentally. There's a lot of reasons for this, including everything from security to reducing the chances of having bugs. So I'm going to come up here and simply change this from public to private. Notice that when I scroll down to my main, however, now I have errors. I cannot directly access type X and Y. So what are we going to do? Well, quite simply, we need to create public ways to access these. These are often referred to as public accessors and more commonly referred to as getters and setters. And they're just special types of methods. So I'm going to come up into my class definition and say public, then colon, and then this is going to give me where I'm going to have these publicly accessible methods. Now, a method is just a function that is within a class definition. So it's very simple. And I can say something like string get type. We're going to say return this dot type. So very simple as far as this goes. Get type, and this is the reason why they often call them getters and setters. We typically put get or set in front of the property name. Now there's two basic ways of doing this. One is to group all of your getters together and then have all of your setter methods. The other is to have your get and set for each property next to each other. I personally prefer this because it keeps all my property information together, but that is completely up to you or the standards defined by your organization. Now we won't always have a get and set for every property. For example, I only need a set for things that are going to change. And since the type of shape that I'm going to have is not likely to change, I don't need a set type. So what do I need? Well, I need a get y and a set y. So I'm going to say void set x. And then in my parameter list, I'm going to define double x. Remember, your parameter names can be whatever they want. I'm going to say this x equals x. You might go, well, how does it know what x I'm talking about? Well, when I say this, and then I use that arrow, a dash and an angles bracket, that means I'm talking about the property x of my class object. And when I talk about just x, then I'm talking about the parameter. Now, because of this, a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to use the same parameter name as my property name. So you might see something like new x, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. It's just a slightly different way of doing it. For my get x, I'm going to say double get x. There's no parameters being passed, but I am going to say return this arrow x. And I'll do the same thing for y. In fact, some people, because of something like this that's so simple, they'll just copy and paste it. They do need to make sure they change all the values. And now we can come down here, instead of saying s.x, we can say s.setx, and then we pass in the number. Likewise, we can say s.sety. Under here, s.type, we're going to say s.getType. That's a method. GetX. And of course, GetY. Now you might notice that this solves almost all of our problems. The almost is our type still can't be set. Type is a private property, but we don't have a set type. So how do we set something that only needs to be set the first time and not any other time? Well, this is where we have a constructor. So I'm going to come up here, and I usually like to put my constructors first. So I'm going to say shape. This is going to create a public constructor called shape. Notice I do not have a return type because it returns the object that we're going to create. Now, what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for something that's going to take a string and a type, and then I can come over here and say this arrow type equals type. So this will create my type for me when I go in and actually create it. Now, when I come here to say shape S1, I'm going to come in here and say circle, like that. I'm going to comment out my S1.type. Notice that this is going to create for me my circle, and then it's going to allow me to set my X and Y value. If I go and run this, you notice I get the exact same thing before. Circle is at 5.6 by 7.2. So this is a very good and simple way of doing it. However, what happens if I want to set X, Y, and my type at the same time? Well, I can create an overloaded constructor. So I'll say shape, string, type, double X, comma, double Y. And then all my different things that I had before. This arrow type equals type. This arrow X equals X. And this arrow Y equals Y. Now I can come down here and say shape, we'll call this one S2. We'll say it's a square, and then give it two numeric values, 3.14 and 2.71 as an example. Now I'll print out S1 and S2. So notice I'm just changing which object I'm talking about. Go and run that, and you'll see that circle is at 5.6 by 7.2 and square is at 3.14 by 2.71. So you see that this is keeping those pieces of information separate. Even though they are both shapes, all their properties are completely unique to them. This is the same as having two variables, an X and a Y, and giving it two different values. So very simple and easy to use. This is a great way to protect our information by setting the properties to private and then using the public constructors, getters, and setters. Hopefully you've liked this video and it's helped you out. If so, please give the video a like and consider looking at the other videos in this series to learn how to get better at programming C and C++.